Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite-Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite-Size Balance.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bite-Size Balance. It's your host, Wendy McCallum. I'm here for a solo podcast episode today. I just recorded this whole thing and forgot to press record. So that's how my day is going. How's your day going? I wanted to come in and talk about my experience with the empty nest. I am going to have my BFF, Megan, who you might remember from, I think, season 2. She was my kind of co-host in the episode where I told my story of recurrent pregnancy loss. If you haven't listened to that one, it's a good one. I mean, good in the sense that it ends well for me. And I learned a lot, and hopefully in that episode shared some things that might be helpful to other women who are currently struggling with infertility or pregnancy loss. So I am going to have Megan back on, and we are going to talk about empty nesting because I am so lucky that she's also going through it with me at exactly the same time. Her youngest, Kate, left for university at exactly the same time as my two did this year. In fact, Kate is at Acadia with Duncan, so they're there together, which is kind of cool because Megan and I always dreamed and talked about how great it would be if at some point, 2 of our kids ended up at a university together. So she is experiencing all the things that I'm experiencing and some different things. And I want to have her on to talk all about that, but we haven't recorded that yet. And I don't know when that's going to air. I thought that today what I would do is share a piece of my experience with you. And this is a piece that really happened in the spring before the summer really got going. I think I wrote, and I think I finished this piece in July. There's way more to this story. I want to be really clear about this. This particular piece is, I think, pretty sad. And that is because that is how I was feeling then. And I'm wanting to share this with you guys because I think it's important for other people who are going through this to know that they're not alone and that it's okay to feel sad. Because there's grief associated with this for sure. But I also want to let you know it's not all bad and that there is some more good stuff coming. And this piece that I'm going to read is just one essay or chapter in a collection that I'm working on. And there are a couple of pieces that I've actually written since where I talk about, a lot of the more positive pieces around the empty nesting piece, both for my children and for me. So I would just want to be clear about that, because when I first read this piece to my workshop group that I work with, we usually meet every week. This is a group of women writers that I've been working with now since last September. I read this piece to them and to our writing teacher, Ann Dowsett Johnston. And the feedback I got was, oh, wow, that's really moving. And we really enjoyed that. But come on, Wendy, isn't there anything positive about this? Like, wasn't there anything joyful happening during this time? And of course there was lots of joy. And I think that I hope I've articulated some of that in this piece, but the truth is that overall, there were a few months where I was really, really sad, and they were really tied into the sale of our home. And that's mostly what I talk about in this piece, although I also talk about my kids graduating. And so I took their feedback and I thought about whether I should sort of zhuzh this up and put some more like positivity and joy and happiness in it. And then I just decided no, because this really is a very honest snapshot in time of how it felt. And as I said, I think a lot of parents go through this. I think probably more moms. I'm only saying that because my husband did not have the same response. And I've talked to other women whose husbands didn't have the same response. So I don't know, I might be wrong on that, but certainly for me, it was a really sad period of time. It is no longer sad. I'm very happy about everything that's happened since. I feel like selling the house was absolutely the right decision for us. I'm so happy where we are now. We live in a cute little kind of modern crib, tiny house downtown. I've got everything I need. I'm recording from my new office now. And I love being downtown, and we're actually really leaning into and enjoying the freedom that comes with not having any kids around. So there's lots of positives here. around it. And I've got this list of, first after 50 that I'm working on, these things that I want to accomplish for myself. I've got some new goals and some new dreams and some new stuff I'm excited about. So all of that is awesome. And obviously I'm delighted for my kids, and I'm so happy that they are where they want to be in school, that they have the ability and the privilege of attending a secondary, institution, and that they're really, I think they're both trying to make the most of that real gift. So lots of positive stuff is my point. I'm going to share that as we go forward. But for today, I thought probably lots of people out there, lots of listeners in this podcast who are feeling this right now or felt this recently because their kids or their last kid left this September, or maybe you're anticipating it. And, as always, I believe in the power of shared story. I think the best thing we can do is share honestly about our experiences, because that is what helps us to feel less alone in all of it. And it just normalizes things. And emotions are normal and we are built for them. And we need to learn how to feel them and not judge them and not be ashamed of them. And that is one thing that I have been able to get better and better at in the last 5 years since the 3 big things happened for me: quitting drinking, really taking up gratitude with great gusto and practicing that every day, and also really working on mindfulness and mindfulness techniques, including some meditation, which have helped me get better at being in the present moment. And all of those 3 things have led to a really amazing last 5 years with my kids before they left the nest. And so if you're curious about any of those things, if your kids are younger, they haven't left yet, or if you're starting to count down and you're feeling anxious about that, and you want to make sure you really get the most out of your time with your kids while they're still at home with you, go and listen to the gratitude episode, go and listen to the meditation episode, go and listen to the many, many episodes I've done around my own story with becoming free from alcohol and leaving that behind. And also, lots and lots of episodes where I talk about with other guests, and also some solo podcasts where I talk about how to do that, how to get started on that if you're feeling stuck. So long story short, going to read this piece. I do not feel this way anymore, but this is definitely how I felt at the time. And I think this piece is much more efficient and articulate than, me just kind of rambling on about how I felt right now. So I thought reading the piece might be the way to go. Also, I'm trying to share my writing more. And I feel like this is a safe space because you guys are all here because you enjoy the conversations that happen on Bite Size Balance. So I will read that piece. One last thing before I do that. Now that this is the second time I'm actually saying all of this because I forgot to hit record the last time. I can't remember what I've already said here. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But I did want to say, again, I am very happy with our decision to sell our house and my kids' childhood home. It was absolutely the right decision for us, for me and for my husband and for my family generally. And the family that's moved in there, I'm so glad they're there. They have 3 young kids. I know they dreamed of living by the lake. I know they love that house, and I know they're going to have an absolutely amazing experience in it, probably experience some of the things that I talk about in this piece that I'm about to read. So I'm so, so happy for them. If I was still living there, I feel like it would feel incredibly painfully lonely to be wandering around my kids' bedrooms and have them not there. It was too big for 2 people, but it's perfect for a family of 5. So I'm so happy that we found the buyers we found. So I think that's it, you guys. I'm probably just going to say goodbye after I finish reading this piece. I hope you enjoy it. Love to hear your thoughts and feedback. As always, thanks for listening to this podcast, and thank you for sharing ideas around topics, guests, conversations that you would love for me to have. Okay, this is called Emptying the Nest. The summer before the kids went to university, we sold their childhood home. We'd bought it years before we left Calgary, renting it out until we could really make it ours. The little gray Cape Cod with its sunny dormers sat on a grassy hill that trickled down to a stream-fed lake. After we arrived, I painted the front door cherry red, and we put in the floating swimming dock and a stone fire pit surrounded by a circle of Adirondacks, painted red to match the front door. I lovingly renovated every inch of that lake house, step by step, until every corner felt like us, from the mitten drawer in the mudroom to the dog food station at the back door. Over the years, the wooded backyard played host to neighborhood Easter egg hunts, obstacle courses, tree forts, tea parties, snowball fights, marshmallow roasts, and so many birthday celebrations. The kitchen was where I wrote my 2 cookbooks, testing every recipe over and over with my family, sometimes eating breakfast for dinner for weeks. We shot the book covers at the Butcher Block Island and at a picnic table under the trees in the backyard. Rob added sections to the wooden dock every year, including a set of low steps when the time came that my dad could no longer manage the ladder. That dock was where I read them a chapter a day of Harry Potter in the summers, on the blue checkered picnic blanket. It was where we ate apple slices with peanut butter as we sun-dried from morning swims, surrounded by lilies and lake grass. It was where Duncan chased frogs and battled pirates for hours, and Georgia practiced her pencil dives and a breaststroke. It was also where my favorite sturdy pine grew, its roots marking the spot I'd instructed Rob to sprinkle my ashes, close enough to the lake to feel it, but sheltered enough to never get cold. We spent 2 weeks purging, painting, and packing to get the house ready for market. I threw my back out and didn't sleep properly for a month. I was packing up the kitchen, and as I cleaned and wrapped the framed Maud Lewis cat replica that Georgia had painted in grade school, I realized why my mom had kept that single strand of clunky painted beads draped over the old rotary phone all those years. They had become a priceless heirloom, just like my daughter's crude painting that had lived next to my cookbook since 2011. I struggled with what to do with all the special things we couldn't take with us that they no longer wanted, like Georgia's precious snow globe collection and Duncan's prized antique arrow, childhood treasures that would soon be homeless. I wasn't ready yet, so they got wrapped in brown paper and put in a box to be sentenced on another day. When the day came for taking the photographs for the listing, the teenagers scattered to friends' couches, and we packed up the dogs and moved to the cottage so the realtor could show our home without any signs that a family lived there. I thought back to those social worker visits many years ago when I'd worked so hard to make our house feel like a lived-in family home. It felt like a rewinding of the tape, a deliberate erasing of sorts. I didn't like it. The day the offer came in, I was at 6s and 7s. It started off wrong. I overslept and began my workday recording a podcast without pants or eyebrows. Georgia had tonsillitis. Rob was cranky from his overnight flight, and it was raining. We'd put everything that lived on the counters out of sight for the showings, and I couldn't find the toaster, but I also had no idea where we'd stashed the bread knife to cut the bagel, so I ate it cold and whole. When we got the perfect unconditional offer, I burst into tears. Within 30 minutes, I developed a migraine so bad I had to cancel my afternoon clients and crawl into bed. Rob followed me upstairs. Without speaking, he started gently working the knots out of my neck with a tenderness that broke the dam. My sadness spilled onto the pillowcase. He drew a bath for me and placed a fresh towel on the floor next to the tub. "I'm glad they have young kids," he said. "Me too," I said. "Remember how happy we were the day we got this house? This is one of the best days of their life." Later that day, after the adrenaline subsided, real life reminded me it still lived there, and my daughter asked me if I wanted to watch TV with her. I didn't care whether her dad had prompted her or she'd empathetically sensed this was what I needed. She let me sit next to her under a blanket for hours and help her pick out bedding and posters for her dorm room next year. As we laughed, I thought, maybe this will always be something we do. Maybe it won't all disappear. A few weeks later, I lay in that same bathtub as a way to pass the dinner hour, adding hot water to warm to prolong the distraction. The end of day, which for all those years had been the most chaotic, but also the best part of mothering. "I need a snack," or "Mrs. Newman is so nice," or "Duncan got in trouble at recess," had become the quietest, loneliest time. Now they went directly from school to jobs or gyms or friends' houses and rarely even ate with us. Slowly rolling my neck back and forth on the tub's edge, I stared at the now bare wall in front of me, its usual painting having been deemed too much by the homestager and removed before the sale. The house was so utterly silent, I was sure I could hear the molecules of air moving around my ears. This is it, I thought. This is the sound of their leaving. That summer, I was determined to notice the lasts. The day of their prom, I brought coffee and turkey sandwiches up to their rooms with sliced cucumbers on the side. I pressed his shirt and pinned the flower on his refurbished Navy suit jacket, the same one his dad had worn over 20 years earlier in that windy field when he promised to love me forever. She asked me what she should do with her makeup, and I realized with great gratitude that what I thought still mattered to her, or at the very least, making me feel like it still mattered to her. That night, when I picked them up from the dance to shuttle them to the next party, the car was electric with the familiar timbre of childhood chatter. The buffet was really bad, but the DJ was pretty good. It took him a while to get things going, but once he did, everyone started dancing. Thank God I brought my sneakers, Mom. Those heels were killing me. I smiled, marking the moment, feeling the finality of it all, noticing a last. The next morning, after a sleepless night, my phone on the nightstand in case of a teen emergency, I woke to the sound of nothing. Rob was away, the dogs were still sleeping, and those same empty atmospheric particles filled the space around me, smudged with the hopeful smell of yesterday's pre-party cologne. I lay in bed a little longer than usual, then padded out of my room in my slippers to get coffee. On the floor, in front of the linen closet, knocked loose by Duncan's late-night foraging for post-prom bonfire blankets, lay the little knit cap I'd bought all those years ago in Madrid, when my children were still just mysteries on the other end of a long red thread. That very same cap I'd hidden in the back of the closet after every miscarriage, and then lovingly pulled back out to tug over each of their soft foreheads in their first year. The only piece of clothing I couldn't bear to give away once the dream of a third child had been replaced with the certainty of a family of 4. I froze when I saw it and found myself giving quiet thanks to the universe that gave me everything I needed, even when I didn't believe it ever would. Just the next day, I was reminded that life could turn on a dime. A stupid fight with Duncan over damp laundry left in the basket served as a stark reminder of the scarcity of my time with them. I had just 3 months and I couldn't risk him leaving home forever on a bad note. I needed him to know I loved him more than wet towels on the floor, dirty plates under his bed, broken curfews, or just about anything else. I vowed to care less about everything that summer except them. I told my husband I wouldn't be yelling again and that it was time he stepped in and stepped up. The rest of the summer was spent taking extra care with every special occasion and trying to turn ordinary days into special events. For instance, George's 18th birthday started a day early with me folding her laundry and making her bed. 2 tasks I had passed over to her many years before. As I tucked her love-worn Lammy into the tattered flannel baby blanket my mom had sewed her before she was born, I wondered if she'd take them both with her when she left. At her request, I made the tedious Ina Garten pasta salad, the one with the 3,000 steps and all the messy sun-dried tomato chopping, and the family birthday cake. I arranged the traditional Smarties in a careful ombre pattern, with more forethought than on birthdays past. We bought more gifts than usual, and I suggested a card game after dinner, one of my favorite tricks for stretching out quality time, or forced family fun, as the kids call it. We played Dutch Blitz until dark, cards furiously slapping down on the round wooden table, punctuated by Duncan's deep-throated cries of "cheater" and Georgia's regular rule reminders. I also embarked on a futile attempt to get the grieving over with before they left and to learn how to be alone, neither of which were met with much success. I thought if I eased myself into aloneness by practicing, it might not seem as harsh when they both disappeared at the end of August. I took myself out for lunch, ordered a fancy decaf and some lemony avocado toast, and practiced sitting and chewing without company. As I sat in the cafe, I thought about that summer during law school when I went to a movie for the first time alone and how anxious I felt. Of course it felt awkward, I thought. That girl was still a stranger, and I wasn't even sure I liked her. I drove myself up to the ocean with only a dog to talk to and tried solitude on for size. The quietness felt nice for an hour or two, but I soon got restless. I made space for the sadness, hoping it would dry up with a good airing. I cried in the shower. I cried in the car. I cried as I walked through the woods and along the seashore. I even wrote about it. But grieving did nothing to reduce the grief. It kept coming, blindsiding me in the most inconvenient moments, like in front of the stacked zucchini in the produce aisle and the crowded waiting room of the doctor's office. The last day of exams, I went to the gym before the kids got up. I met the mother of one of their friends, and she commented in a panicked tone about how much there was to get done before her son left for university. I made a mental note to do as little as possible this summer, other than be with them. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table with Georgia and ate my breakfast, something I hadn't done on a weekday for years. I even poured myself a 3rd cup of coffee, willingly trading in the coming night's sleep for a few more minutes in her company. The day of their graduation ceremony, we piled into cars and headed to the stadium in the sunshine, the kids robed and hatted, their excitement simmering. They couldn't possibly understand the significance of the moment, the privilege in those caps, the possibility of the years to come. There were over 500 kids graduating that day. We sat in the dense heat for an hour, fanning ourselves with the programs, waiting for the M's to start. When they finally did, it was over in a blink, just like the first 18 years of their lives. I tried my hardest to slow it down, marking the moment when my two not twins stood waiting in line to cross the stage, heads together, sharing a laugh. A mental slideshow of 13 first day of school photos whirred into motion, the two of them on our dewy front porch in the early September morning air, their new shoes and backpacks full of promise. This is a last, I thought. They'll never stand together as schoolmates again. The next day, I scrolled through my photos. I realized I hadn't captured that moment as hard as I'd tried, but I also hadn't missed it. They called Duncan first, and as he strode across the stage with his long-legged confidence and wide smile, for a moment he was 8 again, flipping that yellow-white hair and batting his eyelashes as he danced shirtless and shoeless on the terracotta tiles. Without giving me even a moment to recover, they announced Georgia. As she moved with great purpose to accept her diploma in her electric blue heels, for just a minute, she was 5, bouncing up to the front of the Winter Olympics assembly in that navy jersey dress with the tiny white stars, grabbing the mic with fierce joy and telling the whole school about Austria, the home of the Von Trapp family singers. "Congratulations, Mum," the crowd around me shouted when we'd stopped clapping. Eyes wet, I swallowed a metallic-tasting resistance to the idea their childhoods were somehow over after just 20 steps across a temporary stage in an ancient hockey arena. That evening, we got a note from our realtor asking if we could move up the closing date and leave our home earlier so that the new family could have a more seamless transition into the school year. The people pleaser in me considered it, but then my wiser, newer self stepped in. If ever there was a time to put my needs first, this was it. My children deserved to be in their home until they left for university. And I needed that last photo of the two of them in front of the red door. Mustering every remaining ounce of estrogen and a hefty dose of self-love, I said no, a word that had been missing from my vocabulary for decades, and without a second thought, returned to my summer of lasts. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. And I would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, if you've experienced something similar, felt the same way. And I will be back next week with another episode of Bite-Sized Balance.
You've been listening to Bite-Sized Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a burnout and balance coach, I help busy high achievers like you create a more balanced, joyful life. Ready to create a life you don't want to escape from? Download your free Blueprint for Change now. This incredible workbook includes some of my favorite coaching tools and will help you get clear on what you need more and less of in your life. Grab it at www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint. That's www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint.